Oh boy, this article. I have to deal with a lot of people who are way over themselves and think that the world only revolves around them. I have to deal with people who talked about representation for all the marginalized people in the mainstream entertainment as a way to hide their inner insecurities. They did not ask for representation for the sake of people they're trying to protect, as in marginalized people. They're doing it for the sake of themselves, who have issues with people not accepting them, or the world not accepting them. So they have to write diatribes after diatribes that would be best summarized as "please notice me senpai." Yes, I have dealt with a lot of these people, but I have never dealt with one who is so transparent about it. I can finally be me in Animal Crossing, but I am exhausted. Yeah, I too would be exhausted talking about the same types of narcissists who thinks that the world only revolves around them. But let's indulge anyway, because it would definitely make a great therapeutic material. No matter how miserable you are in your life, no matter how self-centered you think people call you, just be glad that you are not a writer of GameSpot who cries about not being able to see himself in a video game. Anyway, this video is brought to you by my wonderful viewers and donators. You can support this channel by checking the links down below. Also, a very late thanks to Aloha Snack Bar and Siegfang for the pledges. You guys are fantastic. So the writer begins by saying that in 2013, he was a high schooler with way too much free time. Alright, we're on the same boat, but you are poking holes from the inside, and I think I'm gonna jump away from that as soon as possible. The writer is the kind of person who would routinely skip class just to play video games in the back of his library. You skip high school to play video games? What a rebel. I mean, most high schoolers of 2013 would probably be going to parties and consuming illegal substances or drink things that they're not legally allowed to drink if they have the opportunity to skip school. But playing video games? That's just unheard of. You are indeed a very special and rebellious person. Oh, please guide us in your rebellious masquerades. So he skipped class to play video games, and the one game that he plays is Animal Crossing New Leaf, where he can go on a town with his friends, become a home makeover demigod, talk to animal neighbors, and be the mayor. Why wasn't every video game built exactly like that? That is a rhetorical question, but considering this person's narcissistic behavior, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't understand why every video game wasn't built like Animal Crossing. It's because there are people who don't play Animal Crossing, like me right now playing Code Vein, even though we're talking about Animal Crossing. I'm not interested in Animal Crossing, it's not my type of game, and it's true for so many other people who don't play the game. Oh, forgive me, I suppose the fact that there are other people with other interests would immediately prompt the equivalent of a BSOD on your head. Regardless, the writer continues by saying self-expression is the core element of Animal Crossing. You choose the color and style of your clothes, the location of your dream house, you can choose what you do all day. It's a game about freedom, or at least for anyone outside of China. However, the writer is disappointed because the game doesn't give the writer the option to have black skin color or any black hairstyle. Now, this is actually a legitimate critique towards New Leaf. I don't think the developers expected this game to be as big as they were. However, this isn't exactly that much of a significant critique because you do not need to have the exact skin color to be able to represent yourself. You don't even need to be on the same gender as the person you are playing, and you can still relate to them in some way, or use them as a representation of you. However, it's evident that in this particular scenario, we are not talking about the normal person. A normal person would be able to relate to another person or another human being regardless of their identities. That is why you do not see a lot of demands from gamers asking for more female or non-white protagonists. They already have games that allow them to play as those characters. I'm playing one right now. Sure, the demands of more customization are not uncommon, but they're not an immediate essential demand in the same way that the writer of this article tries to spin it. The writer then spent paragraphs after paragraphs complaining about an old 3DS game. This paragraph in particular just highlights the utterly self-absorbed behavior that this writer has. Nintendo tried their best to fix the issue by going through several workarounds, none of which satisfies the writer. Not only that, but the writer even sees this as a disrespect towards an entire freaking race. I think there's a valid reason why Nintendo has to use all of those workarounds. It could be because they couldn't develop a character creation and skin tone changer for the game, or that they're too busy making other games in many of their franchises. Any explanation is more valid than Nintendo doesn't respect an entire race. If you automatically come into that conclusion, something is deeply wrong with your mind. The writer then continues with the most self-serving paragraph that I've read in a while. It starts off with the writer saying, "I don't know who needs to hear this, but black people play video games. Period. Yes, writer, they've been playing video games for a while. It's just that 99.9% of them are not as self-centered as you. The last time I checked, most non-white people do not write an entire diatribe of Nintendo's betrayal towards the non-white people. And please do not pretend that you are speaking for us. Just because we both don't have like skin doesn't mean that our interests are the same. The writer then continues to talk about black people who play video games. Yes, we get it. Black people play video games. Non-white people play video games too. I do not understand why you have to mention that point where everyone is aware of it, but you think that people are unaware of it because any slight towards your race is a betrayal or a disrespect or an automatic assumption that everyone is prejudiced against you. But regardless, New Horizon thankfully added more customization options, skin tones, hairstyles, clothings, all of that and a lot more. It's everything that the writer wanted, and apparently it's rare for the writer to see his haircut. Yeah, that haircut is quite common in video games, especially the ones that let you customize your character. It seems to me that one of the issues that are apparent on this conversation is the fact that the only kind of games that you play is Animal Crossing. There is a reason why we do not allow filthy casuals such as yourself to talk about the whole gaming landscape. The writer is now happy that he can play as himself. He's happy that he can be him in Animal Crossing New Horizon, but it took so damn long, and it's hard for him to praise Nintendo. Why? They gave you what you wanted, you ungrateful little brat. But then again, I do not blame you for thinking the whole video game landscape don't appeal to you when you only limit yourself to Animal freaking Crossing. The writer then continues by talking about how representation has been a problem since the beginning of games. Black people have been continuously excluded or only included as a second thought that doesn't even feel that thought out or as a punchline. The writer includes Barrett from Final Fantasy VII, whom the writer considers an awkward attempt at an 80s Mr. T impression. Writer, it's a Japanese game made in the 90s primarily for Japanese people that somehow got big in the West. Also, Barrett is one of the best characters in the game and you should never ever diss my boy like that. Oh, he's a stereotype. He also has a relatable backstory, character development, the feeling of regret and guilt, things that allow him to emotionally resonate to any normal human being playing the game. But since it's evident that you are past the definition of normal, and since it's evident that you have a difficulty of empathizing to people other than yourself, I am not surprised that you cannot find any sense of relatability on a character who has the same skin color as you. I think you are misattributing the people who have prejudices here. The writer continues by saying that it's remarkable how many black video game characters fall into stereotypes, even some of his favorites like CJ from San Andreas and BD Joe, the cab driver from Crazy Taxi, are all stereotypes. I think it's a little bit unfair putting a character from a silly taxi video game with a character from a freaking crime drama and saying, hey, these characters fall into these stereotypes. What's even crazier is the fact that the writer sees these characters as a stereotype, but the writer still relates to them because they were fun and looked like me. Writer, you straight up admitted that these characters are fun merely because they look like you. Don't you have any other things that would make you to relate to a character, like their personality or backstory or relationships with other characters? I do not understand why a character's sympathetic quality should only be determined by their skin color. The writer then said, some black characters from older titles are iconic, but that doesn't mean that we should lower our standards. Excuse me, writer, but at no point in this article have you ever illustrated a non-white character that goes above your standards. Then again, since you're unable to look past the character's surface level stereotype, you are unable to grasp the reality that some of these characters that you suggested are actually already going above and beyond your standards, breaking through the barriers of surface level stereotype and actually be a human being with actual struggles and issues, something that I assume you cannot comprehend because these characters are not you. This is where the writer offers suggestions in how to improve this industry full of these horrible stereotypes. Let's start off with my suggestion, writer. Kick off anyone who couldn't see past stereotype. I may be crazy, but I think they're the ones who have actual prejudice. Regardless, the writer's first step is to listen to black people or non-white people in general. Writer, that's not what you really mean. What you really mean is listen to activists like you, who just so happen to be not white. What you really mean is listen to self-absorbed narcissists who cannot judge characters past their surface level. The second step is to, here comes the shameless plugs. Please put focus on these specific creators that I plug. Please support this particular organization that supports my particular agenda. And people wonder why game journalism is often confused as advertisement. The writer continues by saying supporting black people in games will make sure the standards for blackness— Whoa, okay, hold up, writer, hold up. What is that supposed to mean? What is blackness? Why do you have to center this conversation about video games to be about this race of yours that you deem so special that it requires its own attention? This entire paragraph continues with the writer complaining and complaining about race as if it's the one thing that matters the most in this messed up world that we're living in. How high do you have to be on a privilege scale that your problem is petty things like race representation in video games? After shamelessly stroking his pride towards his own race, the writer continues his narcissism. The writer talks about how he enjoys playing New Horizons so much because he can finally roleplay as himself. He can finally pick weeds and take pictures of his character doing silly things. He then says that the fact that Animal Crossing has a feature that he wants means that the industry has changed for the better. It means that the industry has finally appealed to even more narcissistic and self-centered people who has way too much pride about his race. A pride that is so strong that any sorts of conflict, even ones that are inflicted unintentionally, is a disrespect towards the race. The writer then says, I'm still tired though. Oh, you are tired that you write about representation and the video games that has betrayed your entire race by simply not giving you the option to create the character in a way that you wanted. I wonder why you are tired. I love the next line. Talking about representation in games is draining and it often feels futile. It is also futile arguing with people who are incapable of empathy or looking at people past their surface level. I don't know about you, but I think that's the mark of someone with a really concerning amount of prejudice. The writer then goes full MLK. I have a dream. I dream of a time where games get to a place where I don't have to write something like this. Yeah, maybe play something other than Animal Crossing. And that's the article. It's a self-centered, narcissistic piece about Animal Crossing and how it desperately needs representation. And we're not talking about representation of actual marginalized people. We're talking about a representation of self-centered narcissists who thinks that every conversation should be centered around them, or their race, or their pride of being that race. Do not mistake their platitudes and well-mannered wordings, people. These people are not working for your interests. They are working for their own. But they claim to work for yours so that they can get virtue points with the good boys. And most importantly, these people are not gamers. They talk about the overall industry, and yet the only game that they play is Animal Crossing. They talk about how gaming lacks representation when the only game that they play is Animal Crossing. There's a reason why we gatekeep people like these. You do not make claims about the overall gaming industry while only playing the most mainstream and easily accessible title and make no attempt on diverging yourself into others more to broaden your horizon. Your new horizon, that is.